I am Croc, and I am joined by special guest Jadzia Axelrod. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
We are going to be currently talking about all the different books you have published right now under DC, and I'm so excited because I've been such a big fan of your work. You have published the 6-issue Hawkgirl miniseries for Dawn of DC, along with the DC Book of Pride, and the original graphic novel Galaxy of Prettiest Star. So, Jadzia, welcome to the show, and how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. We did some last-minute Christmas shopping earlier, and now I'm glad to be away from the crowds and back here at home talking to you.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's so exciting. The holidays are right here, so it's definitely a pretty busy time. Figuring out this whole call has been an interesting experience. Thank you so much for enduring that pre-show nonsense. But now that we're here, I want to dive right into it. I want to talk about it. Do you mind telling me, well, first of all, congratulations on the 6 issues of Hawkgirl being released. That is such an awesome Herculean task that you have accomplished. So you should be proud. Tell me, how are you feeling right now?
About Hawkgirl being finished, or in general?
Yeah.
About Hawkgirl being finished.
Tuesday.
Yeah, it feels weird. It feels weird because I've been working on it all of 2023. I got the call in January asking to do it, and then worked on the scripts for the first half of the year, and then have been seeing Amankei's amazing work and Adriana's colors and everyone else who worked on it, and like Hassan's letters all through those other 6 months. So it's been a year of Hawkgirl and my involvement in it, which has been amazing. But also now it's done, and I'm like, what? I thought are we not going to keep working on Hawkgirl forever? I might work on Hawkgirl some more, but at this point, it is, at the very least, that miniseries is done, and we did a great job, and I'm very proud of it, and I love how it came out. But it is weird to not be working on it anymore.
Well, congratulations again. It must feel kind of like a phantom limb, just having it out in the
a little
world
bit
now, and it's just like, oh dang, there's no more issues to come out. But I'm so excited to see, just the future of your work with DC, and I'm not going to say anything too crazy, but I have heard some whisperings, so I'm excited to see what that entails in the future.
Yeah, I am working on something for DC. I can say that much. But I can't talk about what it is because it hasn't been announced. But it's if you like Hawkgirl and you like Galaxy the Prettiest Star, you're gonna like this.
Awesome.
That's all I can say.
So I want to talk to you a little bit about just how the ball got rolling. We can start with Galaxy, because that was your first book you were able to publish with DC. And I still remember reading that for the first time. Me and my husband were at the beach together, and I brought it out with me physically on a lounger, and I was just
nice.
just getting so absorbed into what is such an animated and fun, lifelike book, and or lively book that I really I just couldn't put it down. Read it cover to cover, and I really became so in love with the character. And I'm so excited to see that now that the book is finished, that we've been able to see Galaxy venture on to bigger and greater things within the pages of Hawkgirl, which is so exciting. But to know that there's also a future for the character within Nicole Mains's Dreamer story as well coming out. I'm just so excited. Can you please tell me a little bit about what it's been like with creating Galaxy and where she came from?
It's been a wild journey. I honestly did not expect that book to be as popular as it has been. I thought it was going to be read by a few people and cherished by a small group, but it's really become a runaway hit, which is wild. It burned through its first printing and its second printing this year. And now in the middle of its third, and it's that doesn't usually happen to graphic novels, certainly not graphic novels with characters that didn't exist before. And it's just amazing to have had that happen. It was one of those things where I was asked to pitch for DC's early YA graphic novel line. Michelle Wells contacted my agent at the time, and because she was looking for writers who understood the characters and knew them, but also had a different point of view and could tell new and interesting stories that were not like superhero-y and more emotional and YA-y. And my agent recommended me, and I had a really nice meeting with Michelle, and we talked about what she wanted and what I wanted to do, and I gave her a list of pitches. I was explicitly told no original characters, that they wanted, and I even threw some like things because I said, well, maybe I can do a Renee Montoya book. That would be fun, right? Teenage Renee Montoya.
That'd be amazing.
But right? And then I was told no obscure characters. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think she was that obscure, but I guess my definition of obscure is different than yours, and that's fair. So the line was drawn with Renee Montoya being on the obscure side, and I was like, okay, I get what you're saying now. And I sent a couple Superman character stories. It's funny to read Tina Grace's Superman book and see how similar. I had a teenage Superman pitch that was very similar, but Cena does an amazing job, so I'm glad he got that. But it was just funny to see like the similarities of like where we were coming from with that character. But it's Superman; you're bound to have overlaps. Mm-hmm. I had a Lex Luthor story where he takes over a boarding school that I thought they were going to pick, and at the very bottom of all these pitches, I had a Galaxy pitch. It was just 2 sentences, and that was the one they wanted. And it's like, can you do a larger synopsis of this? And I was like, yeah, I can do that. And that they loved it, and it became eventually the book that you read on the beach.
Wait, could you 2 sentences were?
Oh no, I don't remember. I should. I could look it up. But essentially, it was like it's the through line of the book. It's like, Galaxy is a princess from another planet who is hiding out on Earth disguised as a human boy, and that disguise becomes too difficult to keep up when the new girl comes to town, and they have a romance. And like that's essentially. It wasn't much more than that. If anything, it was probably less. I was probably briefer. Yeah. So a lot of the details were gone, but that was the one they wanted, and
that's so cool. And
yeah.
That was able to like reach so many people, because I know that just being on like social media and seeing like so many people's reactions to Galaxy as a character, it's so amazing.
It's been really great. I think it was a book that needed to be written, and it's also like the beauty of it being published under the DC moniker meant that it got into people's hands a lot easier than other books and other comics. Like, I'm not gonna say that I'm the first person to do trans characters or anything like that, because that's certainly not true. But it's one of those things where it's like
it's historic.
The easy access. I feel uncomfortable with that title.
Well, I mean, I'm saying it's not your words, it's mine. I
you can say it all you like. You can say it all you like.
It's such a historic thing, and
it is historic in this way.
It's changed the playing field, I think.
I will agree with you on that, because I have been told that it's easier to get gay stuff greenlit at DC now because Galaxy is a success,
and that's so important.
Which is wild, and it's also she's the first trans character in DC or Marvel to have her name in the title. Mm-hmm. Like usually trans characters are part of an ensemble, they're part of a team, they're a supporting character.
Yeah.
So
to have her be like front and center is so exciting and cool.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
And then
And that's worth noting. And I do think that's historic, and that's crazy. And I am proud of that.
you should be. And I think one of the things that I felt once I finished reading Galaxy was like, okay, where do we go from here? I need like a sequel. I need some follow up because you can't just drop this on me and then just vanish. And so I was eagle eyed for many months before the announcement of Hawkgirl and the fact that Galaxy would be co starring in that book. So tell me a little bit about that process of what it was like to get Hawkgirl and then not only be able to write Hawkgirl, but like be able to include Galaxy inside of Hawkgirl, like, and then just like where you were able to go with that, and that was such an amazing run. I hope like the people watching this video have watched it and if or have read it, and if they haven't read it yet, please do. It's such a good story, and I just want to ask you about that process and because I'm always curious because it's like were they like hey, we want to have like a Hawkgirl book for this Dawn of DC lineup, or was it like, did you come with them with like a hey, like I know you have like Dawn of DC is happening. Like, what does that look like? What did that pitch look like?
Oh, I didn't pitch. They offered me Hawkgirl, which
Gotcha.
was incredible. But yeah, it was definitely the editor, Deva Wilgus, just coming to me and being like, "This is yours if you want it."
That's
And I was
amazing.
like, I'm happy to take it because I've been a fan of Kendra Saunders since JSA was coming out, and she was my favorite character in that. So I was happy to take her and do a story with her. Um, and so I sent them like a rough proposal and of like what each issue would be, and they're like, "Yeah, this is great. You're good." And like, fantastic. And I asked if I could include Galaxy in it. I needed a character who had a different personality than Hawkgirl does, because Hawkgirl's brusque. At this point in her life, it's very funny to be a fan of Hawkgirl and see the evolution of the character from who she was in JSA, and then into Hawkman, and then into Justice League. And in Justice League, she's become almost a different person. And so, take on the miniseries was to be like, let's take that as text and talk about why this very opinionated and mouthy teenager is now this very terse and direct and battle focused 22, 23-year old. Like, how did this happen and why did this happen? And let's take that apart and explain that. And to do that, to tell that story, we needed someone who was like not like that at all.
Yeah.
And I had some ideas of like the characters that could work. And my first request was obviously we got to bring Galaxy in, because not only does she have a different personality, but she had powers that made the plot work, which was great. Because otherwise, I don't know. I mean, like, there's enough energy manipulators and magic users in the DC universe. I could have found someone to make my cockamamie plot work.
Mhm.
But it was nice to be able to use Galaxy, who was unconsciously, I wasn't expecting this, but like, oh, she solves a lot of my problems in this plot by just her being her and having the powers that she does. So I asked if I could use Galaxy for this, and DC loved that idea because Galaxy the Prettiest Star has been a hit, and so there was a hope that the people who read Galaxy the Prettiest Star would then come over to Hawkgirl, and from there go into more other DCU stuff. So it was win-win as far as editorial was concerned, which was great. So we aged her up so that she and Kendra would be more peers, and it wouldn't be like a teen hero adult hero relationship, which was fun and a neat dynamic. And I really liked it. That was an editorial idea. That wasn't my idea, but look, once I started it, I was like, this is a lot of fun. I like this. It's good to have them to be the same approximate age. And Yeah, I don't think I've had as much fun writing something as I did with Hawkgirl. Because it was just so much fun start to finish. I was having a blast and just going through my checklist of all my favorite superhero tropes and just hitting them all.
That's so cool, and to have that
And
experience must be like
yeah,
amazing. One of the things
it was.
I wanted to ask you because I know a lot of I feel like casual fans are overwhelmed by the characters of the Hawks. They're like
Right.
because there's so much lore there. There's so much that has to do with their powers, the reincarnation. There's a lot of questions to
Hmm.
be had, and also like Hawkgirl, like Hawkgirl is a really interesting case because there's also multiple incarnations of her that fans are aware of. There's like Shira. There's,
Hmm.
I mean, I can't even go into all of them.
Shira. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's the Golden Age one, and like who's also kind of the Silver Age one,
Mhm.
right? And then there's so that's Shira, and then there's Shira, who's from Thanagar from the Hawk World kind
Yeah.
of reboot that was then made canon because it was popular. And then you have Kendra, who was created because they couldn't use the Hawk character. Like it couldn't use Carter Hall or Carter Hole from Hawkworld or Shire Hole, so they created a new character to be in JSA, which is great because I love Kendra, so
One of
I'm
the
glad they did.
things that like
So it is confusing,
yeah,
yeah,
no, just inherently, I could like just barely stumble through even saying what I did say, and because there's just so much history there, and okay, correct me if I'm wrong, but I know
yeah,
Hawkgirl got technically a run midway through a Hawkman run.
yes. Yeah. At the end, yeah, it was a Walt Simonson run on Hawkman, and then partway through, they said, "Guess what? Hawkman is dead, and now Hawkman is Hawkgirl,"
Yeah.
which was not his plan. He had storylines that he was in the middle of, but it was the whole 1 year later
Mhm.
business, which worked really well for some books and horrible for others. Um, and that series is there's some really good parts of it. I think it's a lot of people say it's not very good. It's too easily dismissed. I think there's some really good gems in there. One of which is something we continued in my Hot Girl book, which is the peer relationship with Batman,
Mhm.
which is really nice and like shows that um, Kendra is more than just someone who hits people with a mace. Like she has an intellect and an intelligence that someone like Batman respects and sees her as a peer. And especially at that time when that book was coming out, everyone was seeing her as like a sidekick.
Yeah.
So the fact that he saw her as a real superhero and not just a real superhero, but someone on his level was really cool. And that's a Walt Simonson thing, and I was happy to bring that over into the modern era and have that still be the case. They
That
also had a running gag where Kendra carried her costume around everywhere in a duffel bag, which is hilarious because it was even more bulky than it is now because she also had the wings in there.
um,
And, and that's charming. I'm sorry, that's
no,
charming
that's
that she's
amazing.
yeah, like this giant duffel bag full of her superhero gear and she has to change somewhere. I love that. And so we had nods to that as well in my Hot Girl story. Because that's funny and it's cool and it's something you don't think about, which is like how do they get their costume on?
Oh yeah,
And
I
it's
never
also
thought
a
of those
nice
elements.
yeah, and it's a nice thing with someone like Kendra who is having trouble not being Hot Girl. Like being Hot Girl is something that she's very good at, and because she's very good at it, she doesn't want to not be Hot Girl. Doesn't want to be Kendra Saunders. She would rather just be a superhero who kicks ass and doesn't have to deal with regular life. So to have her have this very visual duffel bag of like I'm holding on to my superhero identity even though I am not in costume and lugging that around is a really good visual metaphor that I was happy to use because it fits everything that I was trying to do with the story.
Yeah, that's super cool. Just one of the things when I was growing up on like the Justice League TV show and like all the animated series, Girl was such a character that stood out to me, and I always was like, oh, she's so cool. So it was kind of shocking to me to find out that there was that one run that started during 1 year later that had her stories, and she didn't really have anything else that was like her front and center that she was like starring. So it's really cool, first of all, that you get to be able to like Hawkgirl #1. That's you.
Yeah, that's me. The only Hawkgirl #1 that's ever happened.
Yeah.
It's mine.
That's
Yeah.
an amazing accolade. And so congratulations on that, and also the fact
Thank
that
you.
it's just like such an amazing book. But I wanted to talk to you because one of the things that really impressed me when you first, before the book had even come out, was that people were asking you about how they get used to or get ready for your title, and you dropped a reading list. And I thought that was one of the coolest things that I haven't really seen a lot of creators do, where you're just like, okay, you don't need to do this, but if you want to have your experience enhanced, like, here are my sources. Like,
Right. Here's what we'll be referencing. Yeah.
That was
Here's the important stuff.
so cool. And you mind telling me about that and how that inspired your work?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a huge nerd. First and foremost, huge nerd. Love reading comic books, which is why I do this job. Because I love them so much. So it's there was a lot of research involved with this book, and I could have taken a clean slate approach and been we are not going to reference any of the old stories. We are only going to go moving on from here. You don't need to read any previous stories because we are starting clean and fresh with new cast, new characters, and it doesn't matter what came before. And I absolutely could have done that. I think DC would have been okay with that. But I wanted certain dangling plot threads from Kendra's life addressed because I'm a fan. So I was there's some things that, pinged my sense of fan injustice. It's what about her perspective on this? What about, how does she feel? Let's at least have her, address these things and have these moments and, have this be real and tangible. Why is she always a part of the team? Why does she not feel comfortable being her own character, her own hero? Why does she have to be part of the team? Why does she need that validation of other people? And all of this stuff. And so to have those references, to have those points, it just seemed natural to be and here's where these things come from.
Yeah.
Here's my research.
Other side of the looking glass, kind of.
Yeah.
See the specific perspective that Kendra has on certain issues and certain
situations,
which I think is
because it's one of the things that struck me rereading those old books, because when I first read them, I was in the story, and that's great. And then reading them now and specifically looking for Kendra's point of view, it's remarkable how often that isn't there. And we're seeing her story through the eyes of Hawkman, or through other people in the JSA, or through her grandfather, and not really through Kendra's eyes. She's very rarely tells her own story, which is surprising for a character who's been around for so long and been written by very talented writers. But this is just an area where her POV is kind of put aside in favor of how other people are looking at her. And that was fascinating to notice that. Mm-hmm. And to really... And so when you read that, you're well, we have to then address how she feels about these things. Just because it feels unfair that it hasn't been talked about. So how does she feel about these relationships? How does she feel about, being part of these teams that have done these amazing things? But what is... in a very real way, who is she? Beyond the gaze of the men in her life. And
I love the way you don't pull any punches with her. From the first issue, you're already we're going into some really dark territory with her current headspace and how she feels about being Hawkgirl and how she feels about being a part of this. One of the things about the book is that so much of the story is about choice and having her own ability to be able to choose what her life is, especially being part of the legacy of all the Hawks that have come I don't even know if I can say before her because time is, wibbly
Yeah,
wobbly,
well,
all that fun stuff. But it's really super interesting to be able to like kind of see how it affects her, and it's daunting. It's a lot to have to grapple with. And one of the lines that really struck me from just reading the last issue was a line where Kendra says, correct me if I'm wrong, "All angel, never a god." And that painted such a clear picture for me for Kendra and how she feels, and how she kind of tortures herself almost. And it's so beautiful, and really helps me just like really appreciate her character so much more in a way that I haven't been able to kind of, you know, I guess perceive from her before. And that was so cool and compelling. So
I wish I could take credit for that because that is a line from a Boy Genius song. Um,
I had mentioned that I think I posted that on Twitter or something, and then immediately somebody just posted like a link to Spotify.
yeah,
But
well,
it
and
works
that
so well.
song, yeah, and that song has a lot of thematic resonance to what I was doing with the story anyway. So when I heard that song, it was like this fits, and this idea of like an angel serves and a god does,
Mhm.
really is something that follows Kendra through many stories, and that she is there to serve. She's there to be part of the team. She's there to be part of someone else's story and not really be the god that everyone else is. Like, she's on Justice League with literal gods, right?
Yeah.
Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, these people are the pantheon. And here she is, and she doesn't have the weight that everyone else has.
Yeah.
And you can always tell, like, this is a joke. I probably shouldn't say this joke. I'm going to do it anyway. But it's like, you can always tell who is a Justice League writer's favorite character because that's the one who has a relationship with Hawkgirl. Um,
Oh my god. I think it's
I mean, it's true though. It's true because like Snyder clearly loves Martian Manhunter, and he's
uh,
the one who has a relationship with her. And then um, before that, what's his name? Damn it!
I'm totally
But
blanking.
I know. He's a very good writer, and I should remember his name. But anyway, he put Kendra with Roy because he wanted Roy to have a relationship, and like all of that's fun. Like, there's not an issue with that until you start looking at this from Kendra's perspective, and it's like, why is she in a relationship with these guys? And it's
Yeah, what
not
does this
really
mean to her
supported, right?
story and like her
Right, and then you have
character?
scenes like where they meet alternate future versions of themselves, and everyone is like, in this alternate future of you, everything is great, and you're the best you can possibly be. And Martian Manhunter, you are this sage, and everyone listens to what you have to say, and that's really great because you have this wisdom to impart. And Kendra, your job is to take this guy's wisdom and spread it among people. I was like, wait a second.
Yeah, I can definitely see
Yeah,
why.
always an angel, never a god. Like, she doesn't get to be a god in the same way that everyone else does.
Mhm.
Um, and like, of course, obviously, with the Hawk characters, there's a lot of angel imagery. You
Oh
can't
yeah,
escape that,
naturally.
right? Right. I tried, because there was so much angel imagery in Vendetti's Hawkman series, and I was like, I'm not going to do any angel imagery. I'm not going to do it because like that's been done. And then I started writing, and it was like the angels kept sneaking in. And I was like, all right, fine, fine,
I
we'll
think the
do
way
it.
you were
And
able to use it was
thank
perfectly
you,
utilized. I think
thank
it
you.
really worked, and yeah, it really impacted me. I wanted to talk about too with this series. One of the things you're talking about was like not being able to have her perspective, or that she's not on the same like tier as the other like Justice Leaguers and stuff like that. But you've been able to combat that with this book by like you give her her first like main antagonist, and that's like
Yeah,
it's not another Batman villain that you're like, oh man, Hawkgirl fights the Joker. Like, no, it's like you were able to give her her own antagonist in oh my god, I'm gonna butcher this name so bad. Volpicula? Did I?
Vulpecula.
Yeah.
It's okay.
I'm not gonna say that
It's
again for
yeah,
the
I
rest
should
of
have
the
picked one,
interview.
picked a name that's easier to pronounce. That's on me.
There's so many things that I
Um,
can read. I'm like, I'm never gonna be able to say that properly. But
Fine. It
I
looks cool
loved her
written, and
though.
that's the important part. Oh,
Yeah,
thank
yeah.
you.
I
Yeah, I
thought
loved her too.
she's
Um,
just evil.
yeah. No,
She's so
she's the
fun though.
worst.
Yeah.
And she's like, her evil is a very self-centered, and it's like, I'm going to do what I want to do, and I do not care about the cost, which is
So
a
many
nice
people's
sort of,
lives.
yeah. And it's this very relatable kind of evil, because like, you see people, like, want to conquer the world, and, like, that's fun. I love those kind of villains, but also, like, who wants that gig? That
Mm.
seems like a lot of work. But it's like, I just want this one thing, and I will not care about the consequences because they affect you and not me. That's the type of evil that we can all get behind because we've all felt that a little, like, sometimes. So to blow that up into a nice superhero cartoonish proportion where she's like literally sacrificing people's lives um, so that she can get back to where she came from is a lot of fun. And to have a character who's a trickster character and a female trickster character who is not utilizing sex to get what she wants is a lot of fun and a new thing that you don't often see.
Yeah.
Usually female trickster characters are like um, using sexual, like, a lot of cleavage and like doing that to kind of throw people off guard, which is great. I'm not saying that's bad, but I wanted to do something different.
Mhm.
Um, and so, like, here was a character like Kendra couldn't defeat by just hitting with a mace, who was dealing with things that was on a larger scale than she's used to, but at the same time on a more personal level. And it was a great way to give her like her own Joker and to
Yeah.
have a character run
They're
around who
so
is like
yeah.
has a larger story. Yeah.
They're so perfectly opposed too because Kendra is such like a selfless like servant of so many people who wants to just
Hmm.
help and at the sake of her own self, and you see her struggling throughout the entire series with her own identity of being like Kendra because like, Hawkgirl's great, she's great at it, but like, she's dealing with so much on her own by herself, and she's struggling to let anybody into her life, and
Hmm.
she's faced with so much of that like inner torment. Meanwhile, you have the main antagonist, whose name I will not say, in fear of embarrassing myself again, who
You can
is
just call her V.
V, and V is so the opposite of that, and so like I'm gonna do what I want at any means
Hmm.
necessary, and I think putting those two characters, to butt heads is like
Yeah.
super interesting and like super fun to explore, and just how just they rip each other apart in like such an interesting and compelling way because of that motivation that they're both fighting for. And I think one of my favorite issues is the penultimate issue, where you kind of get to explore different points in Kendra's life, and V trying to get to her most vulnerable to be able to ensnare her for her evil schemes. And that was such a really cool character analysis for Kendra, and to be able to like her to see her be like, okay, not this time, let me try again, like 5 years time. uh yeah, it's just such a like fun and compelling concept, so I had just like a lot of fun reading that, and I think you did such a great job creating like
Thank you.
this great antagonist for the series that I hope to see return one day.
I mean, you can't keep a good fox down. Like, that's
And that transformation
absolutely.
at the end, where you get to see like this just horrifying collage of both like her true form and then the form
Hmm.
that she presents as, is like so like, yeah, that's whoa. It's a really great
Yeah.
design from your artist Amanke Nahulpan, who I'm such a big fan of. I love
Yeah,
his work
he's
so
incredible.
much, and
Yeah, and it took us a while to get Vulpecula. See, now you got me doing it.
my bad.
Vulpecula right. It took us a while to get Vulpecula right, and we went back and forth on a couple of ways for like her suit to look and her hair to look, because we wanted it to be striking, but at the same time not be like a spandex suit, and that was a tough like middle ground to find. And then like, is this too fox-like, and is this not fox-like enough? And we finally came up with the design that was like just fox enough to be unnerving, like with the blackened hands and the hair, and then to have her like beast form be like this muscle bound were fox kind of thing.
It's great.
Really, really worked. Yeah, I love that. Like, this is the rage monster that's inside her at all times, and like, you don't get to see this because she's being very kind and putting you at ease because she wants something from you. But inside of her is this monster, this literal beast, and that will tear you apart.
One of the things that I thought was really cool is your narration throughout, which I think is like a pretty unique thing for. I mean, I'm sure obviously other books have like used that storytelling method before, but I think it works really good here. And just like talking from this narrator perspective, talking like like a fable is like with like the cursive writing too, just that the letterer was able to use for being able to kind of.
Hassan is a genius,
Yeah,
and
just
I hope I get to work with him on every single thing I ever do from now on.
I thought
Because
that
like,
was like
his lettering is so good.
it was so interesting. It really kind of puts you into the story and like yeah, no, I love that. I thought it was really unique and cool, and it was like a fun way to be able to I don't know, engage with the story in a way that isn't what you usually see with a lot of comic book stories, where it's just like, oh, inner monologue and then dialogue. But it's like,
Right.
no, you got to do something really cool and unique with that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was again like wanting to separate it from the previous Hawkman series, which was very science fiction, and I was like, let's take a fantasy look at this, and I have harped. This is my hobby horse that I get on about how superheroes are modern folk tales and how those characters live beyond their text, and that we tell the stories of these characters to each other in like in fan content, obviously, but also just in casual ways. Like, people know who Superman is, and they know his story and the important things about him to them, and they tell that to other people. And because there have been so many variations on these characters, they have a sort of folklore concept, right? Of like Superman that is
Almost mythological.
right, yeah. And so like, that's something I've always enjoyed and talked about. So it's like, here's your shot to do a superhero floppy comic book that's going to be in comic book stores. Like, we're doing the folklore stuff. Like, I'm getting that. I'm getting on my hobby horse for that. So yeah, to have that folklore element and to start it with Once Upon a Time, and to bring in fairy tale motifs and tropes in having a trickster character who is a fox. And you can do this with a character who is Hawkgirl, who is a woman who is a hawk. Right? Like, she's already got an animalistic element to it. She's a woman with wings. That's something that shows up in so many folk tales and legends. Like, you can
Fox.
versus a fox, right? Yeah. There's a great fable that literally is about a hawk and a fox, and an argument that they have that I wanted to put in somewhere, but there just wasn't any space, and so I guess we'll save that for when Vulpecula returns. If she does ever. Yeah.
I love.
And like having the Court of Owls in there, and have Hawks versus Owls, like, that makes sense.
We didn't even talk about the elephant in the room, about issue 3, the Croc block gang.
Oh yeah, we need to talk about that. But that was also a thing that I wanted to do when I was creating new villains, because that was a request from DC. It was like, I couldn't use the old villains, and I was like, that's great. I would love to make new villains, and I wanted them all to be animal based, because Hawkman, very few villains that Hawkman has are animal based, and I was like, that seems weird. He's a hawk guy. hawks are alpha predators, but there's a lot of other animals that compete for resources.
Yeah.
This should be a no-brainer. So like we have a fox villain, we have owl villains, and of course when they went to Gotham, who did they come across? Not Killer Croc himself, but the Croc block.
It was great. I loved it, and then seeing that when the solicitations came out for that issue, was like, whoa, it's me.
I wrote that script before I knew you existed.
I know.
It was not until like the promotional stuff for Hawkgirl issue 1 came out, which was months after issue 3 script had been approved and shipped off to be drawn, and you were talking about Hawkgirl, and I was like, oh no, did I conjure him into being?
That's so funny. It's the best coincidence I could have asked for. It's so cool.
It's great.
But yeah, no, that was just such a really fun issue, and to get to see the crossover with like Gotham that you were able to play with Alicia showing up, and
Yeah.
just being able to deal with like the Court of Owls. I also love the little bit that you have throughout the book with like the skylight breaking and like Hawkgirl
Yes.
falling through it. It's such a fun bit. I love it so much.
You gotta have fun with these. I mean, I make my own fun, and one of them was to see if I could put in a broken skylight every single issue.
I
And I
didn't check, were you
did.
able to, oh my god, that's so cool.
Every single issue. And then in issue 6, she breaks the god skylight. So
Nice, nice.
that's a
Full
nice little
circle.
punchline, yeah,
That's great.
to everything.
I wanted to kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about the DC Book of Pride, because
Yeah.
I think that's such an awesome thing to be able to work on and publish, and now like we have that. We can it feels like, it was so funny. I was reading the introduction and to see like it talk openly about the comics code of authority, or and then having them be like, oh yeah, we can't like explicitly use like any queer characters, or like, you just can't do that, to like now we're publishing, an encyclopedia of pride, which is like, the best 180. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's just so powerful, and that is like, I just reading
Yeah, it
that
was
is
wild
so
to me to in research was like DC has been following the Comics Code Authority since its inception up until 2005.
mhm.
Like they kept it a lot longer than other comic companies did. But even with that, like we have queer characters who are older than DC's adherence to the Comics Code Authority. So we've always been there, which is great. And like how explicit we were able to get with our own presentation varies. And like Maggie Sawyer is a great example of this, who John Byrne created in the 80s in his Superman run. And like we see her living with a woman. We see her having divorced her husband. It's implied a lot that the reason she divorced her husband is because she's gay. But she never out says it, even though she's clearly
Yeah,
right. Like also the way it's Maggie Sawyer is such a weird character to me to read those early books because she's written and drawn by Burns, right? So this is the same guy writing it, and this is the same by drawing it. He is written like a bull dyke. Like she is a tough, broad mama jama. She should be like 5 foot tall and about as wide, and like gonna throw down with you at any point in time, right? And because she's in a superhero comic though, she's like this lithe supermodel, always wearing mini skirts. As like this, it would be weird. It would be less weird if it was a different writer and artist, but it's the same guy.
yeah.
But he gave her that butch haircut, and that's important.
I think it's
Uh,
so great. Like I can't imagine the research that and how long that must have taken to be able to compile this story, or it's not a story, but this book. And
it took a lot, and I was really lucky to have other people help me with the research.
mm,
Alex Jaffe was a huge help. Zoe Tunnell was a huge help. Other people whose names I'm forgetting right now.
that
And
process.
what is Anne's last name? I feel bad. I'm sorry, Anne. But she was also a big help.
If you could like send me
And
that
Chris
information
Cleary was a big
afterwards,
help.
I
Like
could
I
try
had,
to throw it up on the screen.
yeah, I have them. They're credited in the back of the book. Like I didn't mess around. They were huge help in that. I
Mm.
mean, the research was just like reading comic books and like reading a lot of comic books and trying to figure out like how to condense people's stories, some of which went decades,
Yeah.
into 200 words, and to give people like an overview if they were into kind of like this is why they're cool. This is in brief as I can do their journeys thus far. You can look up other books if you want to, and if you see them after this book is published, then you can know where they came from.
Yeah. I think that
And
was
now
really
this
cool.
that was hard, and I had a lot of help, and especially the hardest part was like they have little quotes at the top, and all of the quotes had to be like things they actually said. I couldn't just make them up. So yeah, that was hard to research because you do have to read them all, and like that's where the research team came in, which was very helpful. Because I haven't read every appearance of every character on there. I've read every appearance
Totally
of some
anyone
of them.
asks you to.
Right. So it was nice to have these people who had, were fans of this particular, like Chris knows Tim Drake backwards and forwards. So I asked them,
With your
like, what's
efforts
a,
combined.
yeah, like that's the one line that Tim Drake had said that's emblematic of who he is. And they were like, this one. And like, yeah, that's it. That's the one. You're right.
And
So that was really helpful.
one of the questions I had also was like when it came to the image that also accompanies it, because like each page has like this amazing like splash page of like the character, which it's so like just reading through it, I got like so like happy and excited because like some of these like images I feel like I haven't seen in like
Yeah.
this crisp fidelity, and it's just gorgeous. It's just like the most
It's,
glorious thing to like open up in a book and behold. And so, what was like
yeah.
the process of like being able to just like choose like photos too, and like
Oh, I didn't choose the images.
okay,
The only one I had any input on was galaxies.
mm. So that's yours. That's your baby.
And that's my baby. Yeah, when they asked me, I was like, here's our list of characters. Who is there anyone you would like to include? And it was like, Galaxy's in there. And it's like, yeah, of course, Galaxy's in there. And it's like, and she's on the cover. And they were like, no, you can't, not on the front. We want characters people have heard of on the cover. We can put her on the back. And I was like, that's fine. Back cover's fine.
Oh man, I love it so much, and I'm so glad you were able to make this book and that it exists. And it's such like a really cool testament for queer fans to have, and especially new queer fans who are getting into the fandom to be able to use as a resource to be able to hopefully influence what they read in the future. And
Yeah, and there's so many. I think that's what's important is like because we don't see them, right? And like some of them we see, like Midnighter has a pretty big profile, Batwoman has a pretty big profile. And then there's other characters who you may see but not know that they're queer, like Nubia.
mm,
And so to have this book of like here it's not even all of them. That was the wild thing, is there was like 200 characters. A list of 200, and we had to choose from that to as many could fit in whatever size DK wanted. So there was a bunch that we didn't include, like Danny the Street isn't in there. Monsieur Mala and the Brain aren't in there. Like there's a bunch of characters who should be in there that aren't. And that was because of decisions that I made, decisions that the editor made, decisions that DK made, decisions DC made about who was going to be in there and who wasn't. And that was, but it's here's that resource, and like I think a lot of people didn't realize there were so many, and to have them all there and to be like, here is a bunch, not all of them, but here's more than I bet you thought there were, and to see like the heroes and the villains and supporting cast members and have them all in there and has got to be powerful. Like I would have eaten this book up alive as a teenager. Like
yeah, I think something that's so cool is because when I was younger, I feel like I didn't necessarily read a lot of comics. Obviously, Batman, Superman, big presences in any kid's life. But I think one of the things that really indoctrinated me into being a diehard comic book fan was like studying encyclopedias and like looking at it and being like, oh, this looks so cool, without even actually knowing what the actual story happened or like what it was. Just seeing like, it's summarized, being like, oh, that's amazing. And then you actually read it and it's like maybe not that great. But you have this image in your head that might be cooler than what it actually was. I think there's something so cool about that
Yeah.
experience with encyclopedias. And another cool thing is that there's so many like updated encyclopedias too. Like so maybe a decade down the line we'll see like a DC Book of Pride Volume 2, and like hopefully there'll be like so many more
So
entries.
cool. Like, because
And
there's, yeah, I mean, there's over 100 more characters that we haven't included.
yeah, there's always
And there's
room
a
for
lot
more.
of, there's always room for. When I was a teenager and drawing my own comics and wanting to get published, as we all were, I was frequently saying, like, a friend of mine was like, I'm going to get published by DC, I'm going to get published by Marvel. And I was like, I'm not into getting published by them. I want to be published by, like, Dark Horse or whatever. And, like,
Mm.
the unspoken element of that was, like, because I want to do gay stuff. And they're not going to let me do gay stuff. They don't publish gay stuff. Like, they are, and it's wild to not only be writing for DC, writing gay stuff, but also to have written a book that just lists all the gay stuff they've done.
It's
It's
amazing.
it's a really amazing thing. It feels good. There's a teenager out there who is writing and drawing their own comics, and they want to be published by DC because DC does do the gay stuff, and that's really, it warms my heart to think about.
Yeah.
Um, and that was something that was really important to me in Hawkgirl, which Hawkgirl is straight. I'm dabbling in heterosexuality when writing Hawkgirl, but I wanted to be clear with Galaxy's inclusion in that she was a queer woman, that she is a trans lesbian, and that she has a girlfriend, and like their relationship, which is symbolic of the things that Kendra has decided that she doesn't need in her life, is presented as like this is an ideal, loving, caring relationship. And to have that be a queer relationship, and have that be a queer relationship between a trans woman and another woman who is fat and uses a prosthesis, right? And like those things are not usually presented as ideal love, and that was really important to me to put in there. And I was really happy that I was allowed to do that, and to have those characters represent that in that way was very powerful to me.
It's
Um,
amazing to have that presence in the book. I think one of the really exciting parts is to see, the graphic novel for Galaxy, and to see like the time jump, the evolution, and also the stylistic changes too, because Galaxy is such a stylized book and it's so gorgeous, and Hawkgirl is too, but they're completely different visually. And it's like, it's interesting because you read Galaxy, and I remember one of the things I was thinking about was like, I wonder like what she would look like, being in like, a more traditional art style, and like just with like characters like Hawkgirl or like Superman, Batman, other DC heroes. So it was really cool, and not only did we get to see that, but we got to see her wearing like her super suit, which we haven't seen before, and that was so exciting and so cool. And if you want to talk about the design process that went into that, and
sure.
the evolution of the characters
I mean,
from the graphic novel to Hawkgirl.
yeah. I mean, visually, that's all a monkey. Every bit of it. Like, one thing he did really great was take like one of the most striking elements from Vash Taylor's design in Galaxy Prettiest Star is that Galaxy's hair is flat. Like there's no gradient or shading. It's just this flat blue, this
Mm.
teal, which is a wonderful thing. And I mean, I took that as red, and also made um, Galaxy's hair flat in his design, which was such a masterstroke, right? Because it meant that the character still felt like herself, even though he was drawing her in a more detailed and outlined style, because that flat hair, that one color teal hair with no shading, no highlights, no nothing, made everything feel seamless.
Yeah,
And like that was ingenious, and the way he kept Vash's like modeled purple texturing, just the way that Galaxy's not one shade of purple, but like several blended together in different ways, and like keeping that the same is amazing. As for the costume, I had very little to do with it. I sent him a bunch of references of like 60s style Barbarella Space Girls. So a lot of silver leotards, essentially. And like, kind of like this. Work some pink in there. And he did. And it looks great. And I don't know if he intended this, or if it just happened out of Kismet. And I haven't talked with him about it, and I really should. But what I love about it is with the silver and the pink stripes and the blue hair, Galaxy looks like the trans flag. Oh. And it's not obvious, like it's not a Captain America thing where she's wearing the trans flag, but it's like, it's there if you're looking for it.
Yeah.
Which I love.
That's awesome. And I think one of the cool things about, Galaxy, I think that, it's a familiar story within DC context of, like, an alien ending up on Earth and having to, like, discover themselves and to find out what their destiny and their legacy is. And especially with, like, Galaxy coming from, like, specifically, like, royalty and having to escape is like such a compelling and interesting story, and I loved getting to like meet her family and to see them, just like the family dynamics in Galaxy Prettiest Star was really compelling. I love them. I need more of them. And I think it's just so I don't know. I'm so interested to see, like, the next time we'll be able to get to, see another chapter from Galaxy's perspective and see her story progress, because it's far from finished. And
oh yeah, there's a lot more to tell.
And I'm really interested
in two different timelines now. Like, there's more to tell of her as a teenager. There's more to tell of her as an adult. Like,
yeah, that's great.
we got space. The future is full of stars.
For sure. And I think that it's just, I've had this burning question for a while now, and I'm not sure if this is something that was intentional with, and it's such a silly question too, but I remember from first reading it. Galaxy's companion, Argus, and there's obviously, a very important DC organization called Argus that I don't even know how to ask this question, because it's not really a question. It's just kind of like, seeing those two, and I was like, huh, it's like, do these things connect in any way at all?
They don't. They're both named for the mythological monster with from Greek myth who has 100 eyes all over his body, and so can see everything.
That makes more sense now.
Right. So of course a watchdog is going to be called Argus. And also a secret paramilitary organization.
Yeah.
I was surprised they let me do that, because not only is there Argus, the spy group, but there was also a superhero in the 90s, I think, early 2000s, called Argus.
Oh.
Who, yeah, obviously not a fondly remembered superhero, but like he did exist. But it's Argus is one of those character names that I would put in so many fictional contexts in one, because I'm a huge Greek myths fan. So like I love all that stuff, and yes, I have pitched Wonder Woman books. Nothing has been accepted yet, but like I've put it out there because I do love. Yeah. I do love Greek myths, and I have a So like Argus was something that I named so many characters. Like it was a common last name for people. It was a nickname for people, and it was like since I was a teenager, like there was always some character named Argus, and so with writing Galaxy, I was like, this is too perfect not to use. He's a watchdog. He should be Argus. And finally, I've gotten that.
Too.
Yeah.
Just like
I was just so glad to let me use that. And now that's out of my system. I don't have to name any other characters Argus ever again because I have the perfect one. Yeah, the ideal possible Argus, which is this adorable little fuss budget dog.
Oh man. I wanted to ask you one of my favorite questions to ask when doing interviews too. Just like if you could have a character team up with Galaxy in the DC universe, who would you want to see them team up with?
I mean, the obvious answer is Superman, right? Because like she's such a fan, and like to have them together would be really fun dynamic. Also,
parallels, yeah.
Yeah. I think he would understand where she's coming from in a way other people don't. At that same time, I think there would be some things that he wouldn't understand about her that would be really interesting to explore. I asked to put Ma Hunkel in every DC project I do. Every single one has had like, can we put Ma Hunkel in this? And so far they've told me no, but like they can't say no to forever. Yeah, and I think
keep on going.
I think you're right, yeah. And I think to have a character like that, because like she is so archetypal, I don't think people realize like she's like the second female superhero ever, the first female superhero at DC. Like she predates Wonder Woman. She predates Phantom Lady. She's like the first, and like to have her as like this sort of like archetypal hero who's like, I'm gonna put a mask on and punch some guys who need to be punched.
It's so
because I'm tired of this, right? Like that's a great. It's like so pure, right? It's so pure. So to have her with that, and Galaxy, who has all these postmodern baggage that I've put on her, and so to have the contrast between, Ma Hunkel, who's so direct, and like Galaxy, who's got all this stuff going on, that would be really fun. So those are my two big ones. I really want to write her and Dreamer together. I know Nicole has written a beautiful story with like teen versions of these characters, and that's so great. I want to do them as adult superheroes and have them kick ass and stuff, and not just share their feelings and be best friends, which Nicole wrote, and it's wonderful. But I want them to be cool superheroes together. So that's my wish list. Is like Superman, Ma Hunkel, Dreamer. There we go. That's the top three.
And yeah, I was reading through the DC Book of Pride, and like under I can't remember if it was Galaxy or Dreamers or both of them, but under Allies they both have, or at least one of them had the other listed. So
yeah, they both do. Yeah, we've been planning their meetup for a long time.
And there's been like, that one pinup that was drawn too of them in I think one of the DC Pride specials as well, where it was just amazing to see both of them in the style of your artist on Galaxy, and just
and like in Dreamer's first appearance in the DCU, like there's a photo behind her on the wall of her and Galaxy together.
Oh yeah.
And in Hawkgirl #1, Galaxy leaves a message for Nia on the phone, right? So like
it's there.
They're there. Right, like, and so I would love for them to like, hang out. And they almost did, because Nicole and I talked about having her show up in the Beast World special that Nicole wrote, because it does take place in Metropolis. So it's like, is Galaxy around? She could show up. And they're like, that does sound really cool. But she's dealing with Ninth World stuff, so maybe it's not a good idea. And like, it turned out to work out for the best, because I think it would have added too much to a story that was like immaculate, right? Like if we added one more element, it would have been overstuffed. So
Well, I think if anyone, I think it'd be really cool to see her show up, especially with Dreamer now dealing with like the Suicide Squad stuff coming up next year.
Yeah, yeah.
Somebody's got to bail her out of that. So,
Right. And be like, what happened to you, girl?
uh, that'd be
Well,
really cool to see.
it would be great. I would love that.
Well,
Um, we'll see. Well, fingers crossed.
I wanted to see if you had anything else you wanted. I mean, there's so much to still like. I feel like talk about. And I don't want to take up all your time. But when it comes to like Galaxy and Hawkgirl is in the DC Book of Pride, is there anything you would like to talk about that we haven't covered yet, or stuff you'd want people at home to know who are watching that I don't know about this experience, being able to write these characters, being able to
I mean, it's just been great. It's been everything I hope for. Like you dream about this kind of thing, right? Being able to play with these toys that you grow up loving, and then to add to those toys, right? To make a character that is immediately accepted and embraced by so many people has been just very humbling. And now a permanent fate. Like Galaxy was up for a GLAAD award earlier this year, and I went down to LA and because DC had gotten me a ticket to attend the ceremony, and I was like, this is great. So I'm in Los Angeles, and I got to tour the DC office, and like right when you come out of the elevator and walk through the door, there's this it's not a mural because it's a sculpture, but it's like all the DC Direct figures, and there's like hero figures and villain figures, and it was like there's not a Galaxy action figure yet, but to see all of them there and be like, and she belongs up there, like that. My girl belongs up there. I made her, and she belongs up there. I made her with Vash because Vash came up with that amazing design, so I can't claim everything. But I half made her, and she belongs up there. And like I felt choked up in that moment in a way that I didn't think I was going to, because it's just a wall of action figures, right? But at the same time, like
I mean, action
there's a
figures are
place
everywhere. Action figures are in, like every child's home.
Yeah.
And, like that's just like
and someday like there'll be one of Galaxy, and she'll be up on that wall.
And how many people that'll affect one day is just so exciting.
Yeah. And to have a character who like I didn't compromise on, right? Like this, you hear so many stories about people who had to compromise the things they create because of
Especially
mass appeal and marketing, especially in the queer space. And to have a character who's like, I didn't have to nudge, wink, wink. Like, she is queer, she is trans, that's clear. And if it wasn't clear in Galaxy, the Prettiest Star, I've made it explicit in Hawkgirl, just in case. And it's just to have that there and to have that be her story and be, like, intractable in who she is really powerful. And I'm very grateful that that happened and that I got to be able to do that. And there should be more characters like that, frankly. Like, it shouldn't... Like, Galaxy is compared to Kate Godwin a lot, who is the last trans character created by a trans writer, if we overlook Grant Morrison and Lord Fanny. Which we can, because that's Vertigo, and that's another kettle of fish, and they weren't out then, so it's a whole thing, it's a whole other thing, right? But like, there should be more people in between me and Rachel Pollack making these characters, and there hasn't been for a lot of reasons, and I'm getting choked up now just thinking about it. Like, I'm so grateful that I got a chance to do it, and there should be more of us, is I guess all I'm saying. And it's too bad that there's not, but I see that changing, which is great. And like, because like Spirit World came out with Alyssa's great character Xanthi, and then there's Jules Jordan, and like there's more, which is so wonderful.
I agree, and just from like the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. I'm like just like so honored and humbled to be able to even just talk to you about just I don't know the amazing changes, the amazing future that is being set up right now, and the path you're paving the way for. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah. I guess you're welcome. It feels weird to even say that. I will just accept your thanks. Yeah, it feels weird. Um, but someone has to do it, and might as well be me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming on to the channel, and
oh, thank you for having me. This has been wonderful.
I'm so glad. And is there any anything you want to plug? Anything you would like to talk about?
Nothing I can talk about right now. I'm working on something for DC that's coming. It hasn't been announced yet, so I can't say what it is. It's definitely going to appeal to anyone who liked Hawkgirl or liked Galaxy the Prettiest Star. Still in that vein of my style of superhero writing. I don't know what other way to call it. If you like overly literate superhero comics about people who have psychological problems and or queerness, then you'll like this.
That's amazing. I'm so excited. And obviously, to all those watching, I hope you go and pick up a copy of Galaxy the Prettiest Star, the DC Book of Pride, and Hawkgirl, which are all available now. The Hawkgirl trade paperback coming soon.
Yep, June.
Super excited. And hopefully many more stories to come from Jadzia. Once again, thank you. And yeah, that'll wrap us up.
Thank you.